They said the first week of marriage is supposed to feel like a dream, like the world finally pauses, just so you can breathe in the love you worked so hard for. But mine didn't. We flew halfway across the world to a private island in the Maldives. White sand, turquoise water, champagne waiting in the suite. Everything looked like a postcard, except us. While I unpacked, my husband was already setting up his laptop on the balcony. He said it was just one quick email. But that email turned into hours. The sound of the keyboard became louder than the waves outside. I told myself it was fine, that he just needed time to finish things before we could really be together. But as the sun went down, he was still typing, phone pressed to his ear, forehead tense. The man I had just married wasn't next to me, he was somewhere between work calls and unread messages. So I wandered. I left our villa and walked along the wooden pier, barefoot, feeling the sea breeze brush against my dress. The resort was glowing, candles flickering in the distance, couples laughing over dinner. And there I was, a newlywed, walking alone. That's when I first saw him. He was sitting by the bar, sketching something on a napkin. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his skin tanned by the sun. When he looked up, his eyes caught mine, steady, curious, almost amused. And for the first time that night, someone actually saw me. I should have turned away. I should have gone back to the villa. But instead, I smiled. And that one smile, that single, harmless smile, was the first wrong step in everything that would follow. He noticed my hesitation, the way my eyes darted toward the ocean, as if searching for an excuse to leave. "First night here?" he asked, his voice calm, deep, the kind that somehow makes silence feel safe. I nodded. "Yeah." "Honeymoon," I said with a small laugh that didn't sound like mine. "At least, it's supposed to be." He smiled, not in a flirty way, more like he understood something he shouldn't have. "Let me guess," he said, leaning back. "He's working?" That one question hit too close. "Is it that obvious?" "Only because half the people I see here are pretending to relax," he said. "The other half are pretending not to notice." I don't know why, but I laughed. It felt good, like air filling lungs that had been empty for too long. We started talking, about nothing and everything. About how he traveled alone, how the island looked different at night, how silence could be both peaceful and cruel. Minutes became hours. The bartender had already started cleaning up when I realized how late it was. My husband hadn't texted once. When I finally stood to leave, the stranger said, "You look like someone who forgets about herself just to make everyone else okay." I froze. No one had ever said that to me. Not even the man I married. He wasn't hitting on me. At least, that's what I told myself as I walked back to our villa barefoot, carrying my sandals in one hand and guilt in the other. My husband was asleep when I came in, laptop still open beside him. And as I lay down, I kept replaying that stranger's words, wondering why they felt more intimate than any touch. The next morning, the sunlight crept into the room before I opened my eyes. The sound of waves brushing against the shore should have felt romantic, but it didn't. My husband was already gone, his side of the bed cold, his laptop missing. On the nightstand, there was a short note in his handwriting: "Early meeting. Order breakfast without me. Love you." I stared at those two words, "love you," and realized they looked more like a habit than a feeling. I ordered coffee and fruit, but couldn't eat. The villa felt too quiet, too perfect in the wrong way. The kind of silence that makes you think about everything you're trying not to. So I went out. Again. The air outside smelled of salt and sunscreen. The path from our villa curved around palm trees and opened to the beach, the same path I took last night. Maybe it was coincidence, or maybe I wanted it not to be. But there he was, the man from the bar, standing ankle-deep in the water, sketchbook in hand. He noticed me almost immediately. "You again," he said, with that same faint, knowing smile. "You don't strike me as the type to repeat places." I hesitated, then smiled back. Maybe I'm not the type I thought I was. He laughed softly, closing his sketchbook. Coffee? He asked, motioning toward the beach cafe nearby. I promise, no therapy questions this time. I should have said no. I really should have. But there was something about the way he asked, no pressure, no expectation. Just presence. Something my husband hadn't given me in days. We sat by the water, the cafe's wooden deck warm under our feet. He told me his name, Ethan. He was an architect from Boston, traveling alone after ending a 5-year relationship. He said he came here to remember what silence felt like without guilt. I told him I was married. I made sure to mention it, like it was a shield, but somehow it didn't sound convincing, even to me. He didn't react much. Just nodded, then said, "Marriage can be beautiful. But it can also be lonely in ways people don't talk about." His words hung in the air, soft but dangerous. We talked for hours again, about cities we loved, about people who forget how to listen, about how sometimes you can be sitting next to someone you love and still feel miles apart. When I got up to leave, he didn't try to stop me. He just said, "If you ever need to breathe again, you know where to find me." That night, my husband and I had dinner together for the first time since we arrived. He talked about investors, deadlines, and his plans for when we returned home. I nodded at all the right times. But my mind, it was still sitting at that beach cafe, beside a man I shouldn't have met twice. I told myself I wasn't going to see him again. I even believed it, for maybe a day. But the truth is, once someone makes you feel seen, it's almost impossible to go back to being invisible. My husband had a video call that morning. He sat at the table, his voice sharp and professional, eyes fixed on the screen. I watched him from the balcony, coffee cooling in my hands, and realized that everything between us lately felt like that, muted warmth. We were there, but not really. Together, but not connected. He looked up once and said, "You okay?" I smiled, the same practiced smile I'd been giving him for months. "Yeah, just thinking of going for a walk." "Don't go too far," he said, eyes already drifting back to his laptop. And just like that, I had permission. The beach was quieter that day, fewer couples, more wind. I told myself I was just walking, not looking. But when I saw Ethan sitting under the same palm tree, sketching again, something inside me twisted, a mix of excitement and guilt. He looked up before I could even decide whether to approach him. "You're getting predictable," he teased softly. "Or maybe I just like this spot," I said, trying to sound casual. He motioned to the sand beside him. "Then sit. We'll pretend the world doesn't exist for a bit." So I did. We talked again, about art, about the kind of cities that make you want to disappear, about how love sometimes feels heavier than loneliness. There was something so easy about him. He never asked too much, never demanded anything. He just listened. And the more I spoke, the more I realized how long it had been since anyone truly heard me. Then he asked, "Are you happy?" It was such a simple question. But it felt like someone had opened a door I'd been keeping locked. "I should be," I said. "I have everything I ever wanted. A husband who's successful, a home waiting for us, a future that looks perfect on paper." "But," he asked gently. I looked at him, the lines of his face, the calm in his eyes, and whispered, "But I feel like I don't exist in my own story anymore." He didn't say anything, just looked out at the water, and for a moment, I wished he'd reach for my hand. But he didn't. He respected the distance I didn't even know I needed. When I stood to leave, he said quietly, "You don't have to stay invisible just because someone stopped looking." That sentence followed me all the way back to the villa. My husband was still on his call. Still talking. Still not seeing me. And I started to wonder, if maybe Ethan wasn't a danger I should avoid, but a reminder of the woman I used to be. The next few days blurred together, sunlight, ocean, the steady rhythm of waves against the shore. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Every Instagram post would have said paradise. But behind those photos, I felt something quietly shifting. I began to plan my mornings around the chance of seeing him. I told myself I was just walking, that the ocean helped me clear my thoughts. But every step I took seemed to lead me back to that same stretch of beach, that same palm tree, that same pair of eyes waiting like they already knew I'd come. He never asked for my number. Never crossed a line. But the way he looked at me made my chest tighten, not from fear, but recognition. It was like he saw the parts of me I'd buried under routine and responsibility. We started having coffee together every day. Sometimes we barely talked. He'd sketch, I'd read, and somehow that silence felt more intimate than words. Once, I caught him drawing something, and when I leaned closer, I saw, it was me. Not perfectly, not posed, just a woman sitting barefoot, looking out at the sea, hair tangled by wind. I felt my throat close up. "Why me?" I asked softly. He shrugged. "You look like someone who's trying to remember who she used to be." That night, I couldn't sleep. My husband lay beside me, face lit by the glow of his phone. I turned to look at him, this man I once couldn't imagine life without, and realized how long it had been since I'd even wanted to touch him. I kept hearing Ethan's voice in my head. Trying to remember who she used to be. The next morning, I told my husband I was going snorkeling with a group tour. He smiled distractedly and said, "Have fun, babe," without looking up from his emails. But I didn't go to the tour. I went to the pier. Ethan was there, as if he'd known I would be. He looked up, smiled, and said, "You didn't bring your book today." "No," I said quietly. "I didn't." Something unspoken passed between us, something fragile, dangerous, and real. For the first time I didn't feel like someone's wife, or someone's afterthought. I just felt alive. And as the sun climbed higher, I realized the line between innocent and unforgivable was closer than I thought, and I was already standing on it. That morning was hotter than usual, the kind of heat that makes even the air feel heavy. The resort was quieter too, as if the whole island was holding its breath. Ethan and I walked along the shore, the water cool around our ankles, the horizon blurring into a silver haze. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Everything between us had shifted, subtly, silently, and we both felt it. At one point, I tripped slightly on a shell buried in the sand. He caught my arm before I could fall. It was such a small thing, a reflex, a simple act of care. But the moment his hand touched my skin, something electric ran through me. I froze. He did too. Neither of us moved, neither of us spoke. His fingers were warm against my wrist, gentle, but steady. I should have pulled away. Every part of me screamed that I should. But I didn't. He looked at me then, really looked, and I swear the world around us disappeared. The wind, the sound of waves, everything faded until there was only that impossible closeness. I whispered, "You should let go." He nodded, but didn't. For a second, I thought he might kiss me. And part of me wanted him to. I hated myself for it, hated how much I craved being wanted again, being seen. Then a gust of wind broke the moment. A couple walked by, laughing, reminding me where I was, who I was. Ethan let go, his expression calm but his eyes full of something he couldn't hide. We walked back toward the villas in silence. When we reached the turn to mine, he stopped. "I don't want to hurt you," he said quietly. "Or him. But if I pretend this doesn't exist, I'd be lying." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew he was right. Something did exist, fragile, forbidden, and growing faster than either of us could stop. That night, I sat on the balcony while my husband worked inside, the glow of his laptop flickering through the curtains. My fingers still remembered the shape of Ethan's hand. My pulse still carried the echo of that touch. And for the first time, I started to wonder if love could die without anyone noticing, quietly, like a candle burning out in daylight. I woke up before sunrise. The room was dim, painted with the soft blue light of dawn. My husband was still asleep, his face turned away, breathing steady, peaceful. I watched him for a moment, wondering if he had any idea how far I'd already drifted from him. I told myself that morning would be the end. One last walk. One last conversation. Closure, that's what I called it. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about closure. It was about surrender. I left quietly, slipping on a sundress and sandals, not even glancing at the mirror. The sky was pale and gold when I reached the beach. And there he was, Ethan, sitting on the same wooden steps that led to the water, sketchbook resting on his knee. He looked up and smiled, but it wasn't his usual smile. It was softer, sadder, like he already knew what I was about to say. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered. "I know," he said, closing the sketchbook. "But you came anyway." We stood there in silence, the tide pulling at the sand beneath our feet. The world felt painfully still. "I just needed to say goodbye," I said. He stepped closer. "Then say it." I opened my mouth, but no words came. Because goodbye felt too small for what was happening between us. Too shallow for the storm inside me. He reached up and brushed a strand of hair from my face, barely a touch, but enough to make my breath hitch. His fingers lingered for a heartbeat too long, and my eyes closed on their own. When I opened them again, he was still there, waiting, not moving closer, not pulling away. Waiting for me. And I broke. I stepped into him, into that space that had been growing between us for days. The air vanished, replaced by warmth, by want, by the kind of hunger that feels like honesty. His hands framed my face, hesitant, almost trembling. When he kissed me, it wasn't wild or reckless, it was slow, deliberate, a question and an answer all at once. The ocean roared behind us, but I barely heard it. When we finally pulled apart, I realized I was crying. Maybe from guilt, maybe from relief. He whispered, "You don't have to explain." But I wanted to. I wanted to say I'm sorry or I didn't mean to. Only. I did mean to. Every moment had led to this. I walked back to the villa with sand on my feet and salt on my lips, and for the first time since the wedding, I felt something real. Something dangerous. Something alive. When I walked back into the villa, the room was already filled with the sound of typing. My husband was on another call, pacing by the window, his voice firm and confident, the same tone he used in meetings, not in love. He looked at me for half a second, smiled distractedly, and mouthed, "Just a minute." I stood there, barefoot, my heart still racing from what had just happened on the beach. My skin still carried traces of salt, and my lips still remembered a warmth that didn't belong to him. I felt like a thief standing inside my own life. When he finally ended the call, he said, "Everything okay? You look flushed." I forced a smile. "Just went for a walk. It's hot out." He nodded, kissed my forehead absently, and went to grab another coffee. That simple gesture, once comforting, now felt unbearable. It wasn't that he did anything wrong. It's that everything he did suddenly felt empty. I spent the day trying to be normal. We went snorkeling together, took photos, laughed at small things. I held his hand under the water, smiled for strangers, even kissed him when someone offered to take our picture. From the outside, we looked like the perfect couple, two people in love, two people living their dream. But inside, I was unraveling. Every time he looked away, my mind went back to Ethan, the way he listened, the way he waited before touching me, the way he made silence feel like connection, not distance. My husband's words started to sound like noise. His touch felt routine, rehearsed, predictable. That night, as we sat at dinner overlooking the ocean, he talked about our future, the house, his new project, maybe a trip to Europe next year. I nodded when he paused, smiled when he looked up, but every word washed over me like waves against stone. At one point, he reached across the table, took my hand, and said, "I'm glad we did this. I know I've been busy, but, this week, it reminded me how lucky I am to have you." And I almost broke right there. Because I wanted to believe him. I wanted to be that woman again, the one who waited, the one who forgave, the one who built her life around him. But I wasn't her anymore. When we got back to the villa, he fell asleep almost instantly. I sat on the balcony alone, watching the ocean glow under the moonlight. Somewhere down the beach, I could see a faint light, maybe from the cafe, maybe from Ethan's villa. I didn't move. I didn't call him. But I couldn't stop thinking that part of me was already gone, carried away by that kiss, by that choice, by that feeling I couldn't name without destroying everything else. And as I sat there in the dark, I realized the cruelest truth of all. You can be in the same room as the person you love, and still feel like a ghost. For 2 days, I tried to avoid him, Ethan. I told myself what happened was a mistake, that I could still bury it somewhere deep enough to forget. I filled my days with distractions, spa sessions, kayaking trips, anything to keep me busy, to keep me away. My husband seemed to notice my sudden enthusiasm. "You're finally relaxing," he said one morning, kissing my cheek before heading out to another meeting on his laptop. "See? This trip was worth it." I smiled, nodded, and hated myself for how easy lying had become. But the truth is, I wasn't relaxing. I was running. Running from that beach, that kiss, that feeling that still burned somewhere in my chest. And then the universe, or maybe my own weakness, betrayed me. On the third afternoon, my husband suggested we grab lunch at the small cafe by the shore. "It's supposed to have the best seafood here," he said. My heart dropped. That cafe. Our cafe. I thought maybe Ethan wouldn't be there. Maybe he'd be gone. Maybe fate would give me that mercy. But no. He was there. Sitting at his usual table near the railing, sketchbook open, a half-empty cup beside him. The moment our eyes met, something inside me twisted, a quiet panic mixed with longing. He didn't move. Didn't smile. Just looked. And in that one look, everything we'd done, everything we hadn't said, came flooding back. My husband didn't notice. Not yet. He was busy checking the menu, asking the waiter about wine. I tried to focus on the ocean, on anything but Ethan. But the air between us felt heavier by the second. I could feel his presence even without looking. Every time the wind shifted, I swore I could smell his cologne, faint, familiar, dangerous. At one point, my husband leaned back and said, "Hey, are you okay? You've been quiet." I forced a laugh. "Just tired." He frowned slightly. "You sure? You seem off lately." That word, off, hit me harder than I expected. Because he was right. Something was off. Me. Everything inside me. "I'm fine," I said quickly. "Just the heat." But he didn't look convinced. He studied me for a moment longer before the waiter returned with food. I dared to glance back toward Ethan once more. He had closed his sketchbook and was standing to leave. Our eyes met again, just for a second, and I saw it. The same ache, the same guilt, the same unspoken pull neither of us knew how to stop. When he walked away, I felt something break quietly inside me. My husband reached across the table and took my hand, his thumb brushing over my ring. "You're really pale," he said softly. "You sure you don't want to go back to the room?" I nodded, barely breathing. "Yeah. Maybe I should." As we walked away, I turned one last time toward the beach. Ethan was gone. But the space he left behind felt louder than the waves. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just hiding from him. I was hiding from myself. That night, the air felt heavier than usual. The kind of heat that clings to your skin and won't let go. My husband was quiet through dinner, too quiet. When we got back to the villa, he poured us both a drink, handed me one, and said, "You've been different lately." My pulse skipped. Different how? He looked at me for a long moment. "I don't know." Distracted. Somewhere else. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked. "I'm just tired. Maybe the sun got to me." He nodded slowly, still watching me. "You sure that's all it is?" I froze. For a second, I swore he knew. That somehow the truth had found its way into the room, heavy and invisible between us. I forced a smile. Of course. What else would it be? He looked away, took a sip, and said, "You'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" Always, I lied. But when he kissed me goodnight, I flinched, just slightly, enough for him to notice. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, then turned off the light. And in that darkness, I realized something far worse than guilt. I didn't know which scared me more, that he'd find out, or that he wouldn't. The next morning started like any other. The same sun, the same calm sea, the same practiced smiles. My husband said he had a quick call to make before breakfast. I nodded and stepped outside to the balcony, trying to breathe. I told myself I could get through the rest of the trip. Just a few more days, then we'd go home, and maybe the distance would erase what happened. Maybe Ethan would become just a memory I could lock away. But fate doesn't erase, it reveals. When I came back inside, my husband was standing by the bed, holding my phone. His face was pale, still, unreadable. "Who's Ethan?" he asked quietly. My heart stopped. I opened my mouth, but no words came. I hadn't even realized I'd saved his name, buried in a half-written message I never sent. "I need to see you." That's all it said. "It's not what you think," I whispered, my voice shaking. He laughed, not loudly, just a broken sound, half disbelief, half pain. "Then what is it?" I stepped closer, but he moved back. "Please, just listen." "Don't," he cut me off, his tone sharp, his eyes full of something I'd never seen before, not anger, not even hate, but disappointment. Deep, heavy, quiet disappointment. He put the phone on the nightstand, exhaled slowly, and said, "I thought we came here to start our life. Turns out, you were already building another one." Tears blurred my vision. "It wasn't like that. I didn't mean to." He shook his head. "People don't mean to. They just stop choosing the person they promised to love." Then he grabbed his jacket and walked out, no shouting, no slammed doors, just silence and footsteps fading down the pier. I stood there alone, the ocean glittering outside like nothing had changed. But everything had. Because love doesn't end with a scream, it ends with a quiet closing door. He didn't come back that night. The villa felt emptier than I thought possible, every corner echoing with the things I never said. I walked down to the beach before sunrise. The world was still, the sky just beginning to glow. I half expected to see Ethan, but he was gone too. No sketchbook, no trace, just the sound of waves swallowing everything that ever happened. For the first time I was completely alone. I thought about the choices that brought me here, how one moment of loneliness turned into a lie, how a single touch had undone years of trust. And yet, part of me still couldn't decide what I regretted more, what I did, or what it revealed about who I'd become. When the first light touched the water, I took off my ring and let it slip from my hand. It sank quietly, without a ripple. Maybe that's how love ends, not with fire or betrayal, but with silence. And as the tide reached my feet, I finally whispered the truth to the morning air. I was never running from him. I was running from myself.